welcome you all here on behalf of the Canberra Business Chamber and Nexus Human Services. If you don't know me, my name is Greg Harford. I'm the Chief Executive of the Canberra Business Chamber, and I would just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're meeting today. I'd like to introduce you to Cheryl, our Diversity and Inclusion Program Manager, if you don't know her, and Fiona Parker, who's taking a few photos and putting video as we go, and Lisa and Adrian from Nexus, who are hosting us here today, so thank you very much for being here. Now, the Canberra Business Chamber's Skills and Inclusion Program is designed to transform the employment landscape for people with disability. Our goal really is to support businesses to break down barriers, attitudinal barriers in many cases, and try and foster genuinely inclusive workplaces. We're trying to do this by empowering individuals with disability through access to opportunities like today's event, and by equipping employers with the knowledge, confidence and practical tools that they need to hire, support and retain diverse talent. Often I'm talking to people about disability employment, and there's definitely some myths out there in the employment market, so we're definitely keen to try and break some of those down, and we do this through running a series of events like this. We've run some training opportunities to help people with disability gain some work experience, and we run a podcast, the Canberra Business Podcast, and we unpack issues around disability employment on that podcast as well, and there's lots of really cool resources on our website, so have a look at canberrabusiness.com, and if you want to know more, do have a chat to Cheryl later in the day. So that's all from me. I'm just going to hand over to Lisa, who's going to facilitate this session for us. So Lisa.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, well, I've just said we actually just rented out that space, and now I'm wishing we hadn't, so we had a bit more room. But, but yeah, we'll do our best. So just starting with a little bit of housekeeping. If there's any emergency, obviously the fire alarms will go off. You can follow Adrian, who will take you down to safety. Your bathrooms are out the front to the left and left, but just see reception on the way out, because we've just had codes put on the bathroom, so you just have to grab the code from reception. And water's there. We'll have some afternoon tea after the session finishes, and there's tea and coffee just out the door too. If you want to get up, feel free to get up. It's an informal session, so I'm going to start with a little bit of an icebreaker for everybody, just to get everyone in the field for today's session. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions, and if you have any experience or you've done this before, I just want you to raise your hand. So who here speaks more than one language? Yeah, yours. Who's ever worked abroad before, overseas? Huh? 2 people? Okay, this is a telling one. Who has ever had a celebrity crush?
How serious?
Has anyone worked with someone from a culturally diverse background? Yep, most people. Has anyone worked with someone with a disability? Yeah, few people. Have you ever had a question that you wanted to ask about diversity or working with people with disabilities that you thought might be politically incorrect? Good. So as you can see, we've all got common ground here, whether it's we've worked overseas, we've worked with someone who's culturally diverse or with a disability, and we've all probably got those questions about working with people with disabilities or creating that diverse work culture, and you might not have asked that. So we've all got that common ground, so today's that safe place. You can ask any questions, it doesn't matter, because that's what today's about, education and knowledge, and sharing your own experiences as well. So throughout the session, feel free, put your hand up, ask questions. We'll have a little bit of interaction as we go as well. So today what we're looking at is the power of inclusion and the benefits of employing people with disabilities. Okay, Adrian. So just tell you a little bit about Nexus. So we've been operating in Canberra for, was our 30th year anniversary last year, so 31 years this year. And we operate in the disability employment space and in an NDIS space as well. So for us here, we have a contract that we specialise in working with people with mental health issues, as well as people with disabilities and complex needs. Our sites are across ACT and we've expanded into Northern New South Wales and Queensland. So we're committed to building that inclusive communities through sustainable employment. So there's a number of DES providers in the market in all different states and territories, and their job, we're funded by federal government to support people in getting ready for employment. So we might do some soft skills training or referrals to training, wraparound services for people, so referring people to psychologists, other support networks. And then we work with that person along that journey of getting them ready when they're ready to start looking for employment, and then we'll go out and we'll talk to employers and try to source job opportunities for people. One of the big things that we do as Nexus is we do a lot of that support services. So we have a high amount of our clients who are working and just need that additional support to continue to work. And that support can be numerous things. In some cases, we might be on the job with people for their whole shift because they've got more complex needs. Some people we have that work in the public service and they haven't disclosed to their employer, but they just need that little bit of additional support in the background. So we may meet them at lunch in a coffee shop or somewhere and just provide that additional one-on-one support. So it's a really vast range of support because obviously disabilities, vast range. We've got all people with physical, intellectual disabilities, mental health issues, and everyone's support needs are different, so the support that we provide is different per individual person. So that's just a little bit about us. So we will happy to talk more about what we provide or what the Chamber can provide in their project as well as we go through, and we'll have that bit of networking time as well. But Adrian here from Nexus, Lenny, Lenny in the back, and obviously Cheryl from the Chamber as well that's here to answer any questions that we've got today. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we've got some myths here about employing someone with a disability. So these are some of the things that we hear often. So people with disability can't perform as well as others. Has anyone heard that one before?
Yes.
Yeah. It's too expensive to accommodate an employee with a disability. You've all heard that? They take more sick days and are less reliable. My workplace isn't accessible enough. And our other staff or team won't know how to interact with them. So that's some of the things that we hear quite often. There's a few more out there. Has anyone heard anything that you think might be a myth, or you've heard and you just wondered why people sort of say those sort of things about when you're looking at creating those inclusive workplaces?
That their needs will disturb the non-high needs people around them.
Yes.
Especially when their needs are expressed through stinging or vocalisation.
Yeah.
And the industrial laws don't stand up if the person has a disability.
Yes. So that's one that we hear quite often is our insurance going to rise? Yeah? So I've been in the sector for 26 years and I've heard that same thing consistently every year. Is our insurance going to rise? So no, is the answer, but it is it is an employer's concern, you know, so that is one of the things that, is a myth. Any others? And Cheryl's industrial relations comments is certainly You know, what happens, if there's a work health safety incident, you know, those sort of things.
I think there's a lot of fear about not knowing how to provide the supports or what supports to even offer.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I think employers and, you know, small to medium businesses, and that's, you know, really as for us as a employment service provider, that's where the majority of our clientele work, in that small to medium business. And similar to you know, some of the demographic of what's the chamber membership as well. And they're, you know, businesses are finding it really difficult at the moment. You know, there's so many things that you have to do to run a business, you know, from compliance to, you know, financials and everything. And everyone knows around here, because you're all running businesses, the stress that businesses are under at the moment. So sometimes looking at that diverse workplace, or how you can employ people with disabilities, is sometimes just not at the top of the list. And so that's what we're here to do, is to make that process easier and provide that support so that it does become easy and you can put it up towards the top of your list as well. Okay, so the reality with all those myths is, with the right support and inclusive practices, employees with disabilities thrive and bring real value to the workplace. So when we talk about inclusive workplaces, what are we talking about? So we're talking about the culture, really, that heart of the culture. So the culture that values diversity, equity and accessibility. We're creating that culture, and we're talking about that inclusive, that everyone feels respected, supported and able to contribute fully. And that's if you've got a disability, you don't have a disability, with your parent, if you've got some other complex health issues, all sorts of things that you might need that additional support for you to contribute in the workplace. We're also talking about what policies and practices you have in place. So having those documented practices and processes in place about inclusion, having those inclusion statements, diversity plans in place, really puts that at the centre of what you're doing as an organisation or business. So that's really a key thing as well. And obviously getting your key stakeholders on board, your leadership teams, obviously, you know, everything comes from the top, but if you can get some of those advocates around employing people with disabilities and just creating that diverse workplace, that's really helpful. I've found over the years that changing up the terminology when you're talking is really helpful as well. So now we would not go out and talk, and I hope the team doesn't do that here, because we'd have to have another session where I was making them role play what they're saying. But we don't go out and say, you know, we're a DES provider, disability employment service provider, because to be honest, no one wants to hear about it. But people want to hear about how they can create that diversity in the workplace. So that's our language, and that's how we speak. You know, what's your culture like in your workplace? Would you like to create a more diverse work culture? And then people become interested, having that conversation, and then we can sort of move forward and start talking about you know, how that could look, because how it will look for one organisation or business, that diversity compared to another one, are very different. I'm just going to pause for a second just to see if there's any questions so far. No? We'll keep going? Okay. So,
Lisa,
yes.
I'll probably, I'm loving this presentation, I'd probably add everyone feels able to learn about each other, you know, not just respected, but, you know.
Yep.
And because I think diversity, we're all diverse.
Like it's a safe workplace.
Yeah, it's a safe
Yeah.
workplace, and it's actually one where we can learn when people are different and in some way, as we all are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
Mm.
Thank you.
Yeah, safety.
Yeah. Okay, So why hire people with a disability? So number of reasons, sort of research in this area as well if you're interested. But we've got obviously a number of people with disabilities in Australia, so 1 in 5 around the numbers. And it's really an untapped talent pool. So we've gone through the skills crisis and not being able to recruit and find jobs, but you've got a whole different range of people that are available to do jobs in your
Lisa,
workplace.
can I add something?
Yes.
The NDIA put out a report, their quarterly report or 6-monthly report, the last few days. There's 27 or 28% of people with disabilities who are wanting to work. Only 27% actually have a job, compared to there's 70-80% of other people without disabilities. Is that about right? Who do. So that absolutely sits comfortably with that untapped talent pool.
Yes.
There's a lot of people out there that, who are just desperately wanting to get into the workplace.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And we might have a little bit, we'll touch on the DES compared to the National Disability Insurance Agency and the NDIS scheme a little bit just at the end, because it's important to know there's a whole range of ways that you can engage and employ people with disabilities. So yeah, this brings new perspective. It's like everything, as Sonia said, bringing other diversity into the workplace as well. So it can also help increase innovation and team morale. And also, I think this is a really, really important key point. It reflects community values and customer diversity. Yeah. So obviously, we want to, that our customers know that we have, for us as an organisation, we have so many people with disabilities working within our organisation across our different sites, and that reflects our customers' diversity. Community values are changing as well. So we might just touch on the NDIA and the DES thing now. So obviously the National Disability Insurance Agency has a lot of publicity. Unfortunately, probably in a more negative space than what we would like to see showcased. And so if you have a disability and you're wanting that support to get employment, you could go to the NDIS and you could ask and advocate for yourself to get some funding in your NDIS plan to help you find employment. Yeah? That we find what happens is that there's very little money put in employment plans under the NDIS for employment. Yeah? So usually people who have got quite complex support needs, so some of the people that I'm talking about where we'll be on the shift with them for the whole shift, will more likely have some sort of support dollars in the NDIS plans so that they can continue to work because they need that more intensive support. But there's a whole lot of other people who have disabilities or mental health issues that are not eligible for the NDIS. Yeah? And that is generally the people that we are supporting through our Disability Employment Service program. So they may not be able to get the funding because they have what they call, terminology-wise within the agency, is they have psychosocial disabilities, so the mental health side of things, so they become ineligible for the NDIS. Or for whatever reason, they just don't meet the criteria. Yeah, so there's a whole lot of different ways. And then you have other pathways as well, like Jigsaw is one, who assist people as well. So there's a number of different types of providers, whether it's under the NDIS, under the DES, so there's different pathways that people can get find employment.
Lisa, can I ask
Yes,
a question
please.
there? Because under the NDIS, I have found that, assisting people into employment, which is sort of where I sit, and you're right, a lot of people just don't have that specific employment money. But have you found, I've found some pathways to assist why are they not putting more money into specific employment?
I think like if anybody could answer that question, it would be a millionaire, to be honest. Like,
Yeah, okay, fair.
so it's quite common, I guess, is what I would say.
Yeah.
So I guess for us, the pathway is that we can get people into the Disability Employment Service Program.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the pathway, because it's a separate bucket of funding under Department of Social Services. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that portfolio, since the election, has stayed under the Department of Social Services, where the National Disability Insurance Scheme portfolio moved to health and ageing, which is an interesting choice in itself. And you know, what does that sort of message see it's about? You know, how does the government actually see it? I feel that for my personal view, going under that portfolio, I think they'll be less likely to be focused on employment, because it changes it almost to a health issue rather than a social employment. Yeah. So as I've mentioned to a few of you, I was at the Disability Employment Australia conference last week in the Gold Coast, and that certainly was a topic of conversation, and what some of the advocates and people with disability themselves were sort of saying is, you know, that's a very interesting shift, that portfolio. So I think it's just about, we just continuing to need to push for employment to be put in people's plans. And I believe we need to change the dialogue of the way that we're talking about the NDIS. So as I've mentioned, there's quite a lot of publicity, and what you hear in the media is quite negative often. You know, we need to get the dodgy providers, you know, out of the market. You know, are people registered, are they non-registered? So, and I think that's just so ingrained in government's vision at the moment. So even though Bill Shorten is no longer the NDIS minister, I was with an event and he was there Saturday night, and I said to him, we were talking and he was just introducing himself, and I said to him, yes, I know who you are, Bill, and I know you know about the NDIS and you know what they're doing. And the first thing he still said to me, are you a registered provider or not? And I said, well, yes, I am, actually. And then he said, how can we get these shonky providers out of the marketplace? And I had a conversation with him because I had the pleasure of sitting next to this lovely young lady with Down syndrome on my flight back from the Gold Coast last week. And she was obviously a little bit, she actually spoke at the conference, but she was a little bit nervous about flying. And she had a support worker with her, and the support worker was sort of saying to me, oh, she's quite anxious and whatever. So I was just having a conversation, trying to, you know, take her mind off the flight and everything. And then when we landed, she said, I did it. You know, so she's been to a conference, she's spoken at a conference, obviously she's been away from her family for 3 nights. You know, she's been on an aeroplane and a flight, and I said to him, these are the stories that need to be showcased. That positive side and the impact that the NDIS does have on individuals' lives, not how do they get the shonky providers out of the system.
Well, I might add from this report for ACT, there's like $490 million that goes into the business economy in ACT alone, you know, for every year. And only a small number, because they do put the proportion of fraudulent activity, it's only a very small number.
Yes, yes. Yeah.
But everyone gets tired.
Yeah.
We could go on about this.
Yes, we could go on.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about reflecting community values and customer diversity. Okay, thank you. Okay, so some of the benefits that businesses can have about employing someone with disabilities is that improved employee retention, which I'm sure everyone's always keen on having that retention improved. The high productivity and loyalty, the enhanced brand reputation. You can also access to government supports and subsidies as well. I'll talk about that in a minute as well, and compliance with legal obligations under the Disability Discrimination Act. So there is money available as well, so if you do have somebody that you want to employ with a disability and they may need some workplace adjustments, then we have access to job access, where we can apply for funding for certain things. So do you want to give an example?
We did a workplace modification for a squat door. It was a key only, and the young lady sometimes had to use a wheelchair. So that operation with the key, getting up to push the door, the government come on board and motorised the door and modified the toilets for her as well.
So that can be a physical adjustment that sometimes and these adjustments are actually beneficial for all the workplace. Yeah. It's not just about that one person with that specific disability or that specific accessibility need. Yeah. There's also sometimes we can actually tap into some additional funding for training where we can come out and train workplaces as well. So that's a really important initiative. It's there to increase that accessibility, so it's something that should be used by employers if needed. Okay. So before we go on, just want to share, I know that I'm almost running out of time, a quick story with you about one of our clients. So Philip was a 35-year-old man and he lives with autism spectrum disorder. He accessed DES through ourselves and he has an NDIS package as well. So he made the decision to move from Sydney to Canberra because it was closer to family, and he found that Canberra was a little less hectic than Sydney, so it was good for him as well. So he's been supported through his journey with Nexus, through his employment coaches, not only with his employment journey, but also to help him with developing other tools to support healthy living. So one of the things when we're looking for a job for someone, the first thing is finding the right employment fit. Yeah? So we want to find a job that's really going to suit that person. Yeah? And often that is around looking at what interests, hobbies and things that they have. So for Philip, he had a real interest in gardening and plants and things. So his job is at Bunnings Warehouse. Yeah? And what he does there is he cares for the plants. So outdoor area at Bunnings, he waters the plants, he packs plants out, all those sort of things, which he really enjoys doing. Yeah? He describes the job is that he finds it very relaxing and he takes pride in doing his job well, ensuring that all the plants have everything they need to have to thrive. So I think I've put that up there. This is a quote from him. In some jobs I've had, I felt too rushed, but I feel like this job you can take your time. The plants need you to care for them properly and carefully so they don't die. So he feels that he's supported and he can take that time to do that job to a really high standard, which is often important for someone who's on this autism spectrum. And he's been challenged before when his roles have been too hurried for him. He describes Bunnings as being supportive, and they both think that this is a really good job fit. Bunnings also support with him growing his confidence, and he also is beginning to take on additional nursery supports, such as customers' service tasks as well. So the other part is that adapting to change. So for clients on the autism spectrum, sudden or significant change outside routines can present different challenges. So it's always important, and that's why we provide that high level of support, that everyone feels supported so they can overcome any additional challenges. And Philip says that he's feeling optimistic and supported. The other thing is around empowering wellbeing. So we all know that there's more to life than just work, even though we're here promoting work. But Philip's journey was also about making positive changes around his lifestyle. So that's when I talk about wraparound services. So we were able to provide some of those wraparound services for him so that he was able to start looking after himself a little bit better. So the final quote from him, that he's been really focusing on nutrition and on cooking for himself, and he now has a personal trainer, and he's working on exercise and being healthy. Yeah, so it's just one story, and obviously we have many of those, and there is some more stories on our website. If you want to go on and look at that case study section, you'll find some. Okay. Okay, so some inclusive practices, some day-to-day things that you can do to make your organisational business more inclusive is around that accessibility to recruitment and onboarding. So quite often we talk about accessibility when people start work, that there's a real role in accessibility at the interview stage, in the onboarding stage, that you can start putting some of those things in place, and even simple little things might make a difference, such as providing interview questions, before the interview, if someone's anxious, so they have some time to actually absorb what those questions are. Same with the onboarding processes, the other steps that you can put in place with that as well. Obviously flexible work arrangements, everyone's talking about, work from home, back in the office, but depending on how your organisational business runs, if you can offer any flexibility, it can sometimes be really beneficial, especially for someone with a disability. And it doesn't just need to be about working from home, it can be those adjustments to start times and those sort of things as well. Inclusive leadership and training. So providing that training to your workforce can be very beneficial, and you can get people or to come in, or you can get the person knows themselves best as well, and they might be comfortable enough to talk about what support needs they need as well. Yeah. We've talked about that workplace modification already, and any other mental health supports, and oh, sorry, I've dropped off to a different thing. And I've already talked about job access. Yep. Okay, so how Nexus can help? We can provide tailored recruitment services. We can provide that post-placement support for both the employee and the employer, so the business as well. We can access that workplace modification and mental health support, and we can provide advice on funding and inclusive practices. We do have wage subsidy available as well in some cases. Might be what the employer is looking for, but I guess we try to encourage people to recruit and employ off talent rather than the wage subsidy, but sometimes that might be needed, so for that bit of additional support at the start of the employment placement. Okay, so what can your role be in creating an inclusive workplace? So become that champion of inclusive hiring in your business or network. It's not just about your own organisation, your own business, it's about promotion to the community and your contacts and your networks. Really review internal and policies and training. As I've mentioned before, having those in place is really important because it really sets that framework around this is what you're going to do with the inclusive and diversity in your workplace. You can partner with Nexus or the Chamber to find some great new talent for your organisational business, and really embrace diversity as a driver of your business success. Really important. I'd be really keen if anyone would like to share, or if you want to take a post-it note and write down any sort of key takeaways with what you could do or what you're thinking about how you could go about helping to create those inclusive workplaces, whether it's in your workplace or throughout your networks. I'll take a minute, and then if you've got any questions, we can talk those. Anyone like some post-it note? Or you've got paper there? I got this thing at the conference last week and it
So
seems to be
very
falling
close,
apart. I'm going to put some on. Yeah. I think I have to take them off anyway.
Can we still ask questions?
Yes, please ask questions. Right down, ask questions.
So a question I had when I talked to different businesses and, you know, thinking of employing someone with disability.
Yes.
I think it's that, you know, the time it can take for recruitment. Would it be fair to say it seems to be a bit longer than maybe putting an ad on Seek and, you know, going down that pathway?
I don't think it's necessarily longer. I think it's more about sometimes if you approach, say if you approached us and you needed a hairdresser, just, you know, for example, you know, and it's like, you know, approaching any private recruitment company. If I don't have a hairdresser, like on my books, then I don't have a hairdresser. You know, so sometimes that's when people think they'll come to an agency, a disability employment agency, and just find that one person with a disability. But we have to have that skill and that talent on our books before we can actually provide that. So I think you're going to say
Oh no, I was just going to agree. I was going to say surely it would just depend on what the role was.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is about the role. So it's not necessarily, I don't think it necessarily takes any longer. I mean, I know from my experience, you know, with Seek and different things as well, you know, you can advertise and at some point, you know, you might have 0 applications, sometimes you might have 100, and sometimes I'll advertise for a support workers for our NDIS program and I might get 80 applications and my HR manager might book 2 lots of interviews with 20 people, for example. Like we do a group interview, and I might have 5 turn up. Yeah. So I think that's just part of the recruitment process. In any way, yeah. I think it's specialised to disability employment. Yeah. Anyone else got questions? Remember, any question you can ask. There's no right or wrong, and we will have an opportunity to stay around for the next.
Yes.
Little bit, we've got some snacks and that, so we will be able to ask any questions if you want to have individual conversations as well.
I've got another question.
Yes, please, keep questioning.
So, and this is one of those questions, how did you feel at the beginning that might be not maybe totally acceptable in the public, but it's about you know, explain. So you've explained, you know, people with disability and people with mental illness. That's your general cohort.
Yes.
But then sometimes the employer wants to know more, and maybe, you know, I suppose the level of disability you know, when I worked more in the disability sector, there was categories. Now it just seems everything's captured under neurodiverse or psychosocial. But it's leaving out a lot of other people. So how do you manage that with an employer?
So what I would be doing is talking to the employer about, so I don't want to talk about diagnosis or disability type, I want to talk about what the person's skills are and what any adjustments they may need in the workplace, So their adjustments are probably because of their disability, but that's how we're picking that up, So their adjustments might be, they will need a support worker to come with them for the first probably 4 weeks, because we need to actually do some scaffolding and work out duty statements and break down those duty statements for that person. That's the adjustment, So that in itself is saying that person has some probably a bit more complex needs. Or a workplace adjustment may be, you know, this person has anxiety, and really will need some additional time and training to settle in before they can do any customer service type things. So always I'm talking about adjustments rather than disability type.
Or a routine is needed.
Yeah, routine is there's a whole raft of adjustments that, you know, but that's what we're talking about,
Yes, I really love that. Both the assessment of the presenting skills and adjustments that are needed, because I think that's a real rights-based approach.
Yes.
And it fits within the human rights model of how we
I
should support
to-
people
I-
with disability rather than yeah, that's great.
I agree, but I think that's one of the myth type areas that makes it hard for a business to step over the line to
Yes.
say, actually, yeah, we should give this a go.
Yeah.
What about for people who are not diagnosed or not assessed?
And then
Can they
worst
still be
case,
supported? Because there might be reasons why people don't want to be assessed.
So for what?
Like neurodiversity, let's say.
Yeah. So to access us, there is specific criteria
Yep.
that the government sets, like that people will need to go through to actually get onto the Disability Employment Service Program. So they will need some sort of diagnosis or medical evidence. You know, and we just try to work with that individual on making that process as easy as possible. Lenny does intake, Adrian does intakes and things as well, so that we can, because it's
So we can support people to
we
get
can
the
support people to get
assessment.
registered,
Yeah.
and we will make it the easiest way possible.
And
Because-
it's not as high as you must be NDIS
No.
recognised.
No.
Okay, that's great.
Yeah, nothing to do with our employment program, nothing to do with the NDIS.
Fantastic.
Yeah. But yeah, sure, look, I mean, is a really good question, and, you know, I mean, the other things that we can do is, you know, offer, you know, to bring the people in, you know, for an interview, or, you know, maybe bring them in for a couple of hours, you know, just so that they can meet and do a little bit of a work taster, not trial, not to work trials, but, you know, just, you know, so that both parties can get to meet each other and, you know, see if it would work, because everyone wants, the placement to be successful. But it's no different than if you're employing anybody, really. You just, you know, you employ people, you don't, you know, you think you go through that interview process and, you know, a month later, then not be working out. It's the same successful placements with any,
Yeah, that's the key
People.
takeaway.
with disabilities or not, really. Yeah.
And sometimes the disability can present a unique strength that other people with disability don't have.
That's right.
I had a client, a staff member who could memorise barcodes and client telephone numbers, and
Yeah.
it was just amazing, you know.
Yeah.
It's a superpower.
Yeah.
So emphasising that, I guess, is important too.
Yes. Yeah. It's just that strengths-based approach, you know, talking about their strengths, you know, what it is, duties they can do, and we also can do that sort of customisation of jobs. So sometimes if a job will not, a job that's advertised in the open market may not suit somebody, right?
Yeah.
So that's when we can come in and do some customisation about, you know, changing up the job description and the duties to actually make that job, you know, suitable for someone. So I know Adrian has one that he talks about sometime about a young guy that he was working with who was really into cars. And he had no experience, but he just needed to start. So Adrian went out and spoke to a local mechanic, and, you know, and his approach was, I just want to, you know, well, what are the jobs around, you know, your workshop that you don't get done? You know? And he said, you know, well, we need this picked up, we need this cleaned, we need this, and whatever. So that was the starting point of having that conversation about, okay, well, we've got this gentleman, and he only wants to work, you know, about 8 hours a week. Could we start creating something so that you get those jobs done around your workshop? And so that was a placement that suited that young guy, because he started to, you know, get some work experience and do it in an area that he really enjoyed working in with his hobby. You probably got more to say.
Yeah, he literally got sold into business. So that mechanic was taking him to another store, and that was the reason the mechanic took the second job. So they come as a pair, the mechanic gets paid top dollar, and then his offsider who does the breakdown is the minimum wage. But that family took him in, they had Christmas, Easter, all of them, they just wrapped him around.
To add that one, we do have clients who have disability and didn't want to disclose their disability to their employer. So we also cater what is it they need to thrive to work through without even supporting them in the workplace to be able to retain the job without the employer knowing their disability, just to retain their position and thrive how to modify their position and assign by the consultant to that particular person.
That's amazing because that maintains the dignity of the client. And I was just also thinking the whole application interview process, if that could be, I can see you tailor that, because I remember we were running an employment program in regional Victoria for culturally and linguistically diverse people, and a lot of the people, there were much more community rights rather than the rights of the individual. So we were able to organise group interviews with Bendigo Health, the hospital, for cleaners, rather than one-on-one, which would be very confronting. So just adjusting that application process was really successful.
Yes, absolutely, and that's, I think, everyone does go down when they think about adjustments, they think, physical adjustments,
A ramp.
wheelchair, desk, those sort of things, and that people don't often think about that interview stage and that onboarding stage when those adjustments can be made as well. Because that onboarding stage is, really critical for that development of that relationship between, the employer and the employee. So the better you can do that onboarding, the more successful the relationship is.
Could even be the positioning in the office, because one staff member, he would just go crazy when they'd cut the lawn. And it didn't bother anyone except for him. And, it was just like, just move him, like to a safer place.
Not hard,
But,
is it?
it's hard to, if it doesn't bother you, it's hard to see that. So,
It can be really simple things to
Big
more
one.
complicated,
And that onboarding then, and I suppose breaking it down to what could be a bother. So someone again with autism coming into a meeting, sometimes the meeting starts with a bit of chatter just to break the ice, and they can't understand, well, why would you do that? Because you just got to get on with the meeting.
there's
And
no
that,
point to it.
another example I had was this person started this workplace, and he hadn't actually been invited to the monthly morning tea for birthday, so he didn't attend. So everyone thought he was really, stuck up and rude and whatnot. He just didn't think he was included. So it's really simple things.
Yeah.
Lisa, it's fascinating being here, and I sort of think, gosh, there's a lot of upcoming short-term contracts I have that could ideally be with someone who maybe wouldn't want to leave their house, for example, because it's all IT based.
Yes,
Is that the kind? Do you have short-term contracts where
absolutely.
we're not looking to do a full-time, we're working piecemeal on projects and things?
Yes, definitely.
But I particularly have a lot of work that can be done from someone who's at home on the computer, as long as they're, and I'm very relaxed. I've actually managed many people and volunteers with very, very broad and complex needs over the last few years.
Yes.
But so that's
Definitely, and also, the beauty with that is that they don't have to actually live in Canberra either. So we've just set one of our clients up in the Gold Coast, which is a remote working job, which is actually based in, the organisation is based here in Canberra, but it was a remote working job, so they've set up with that job.
And would job access assist if an employee was working in their own home these days? No. That's a shame.
No, unfortunately.
But
So definitely happy to chat about that.
Yeah,
how that could
yeah.
work.
also, sorry, I'm going to go into
No,
the
please,
IT
this
geek
is what it's
area.
about. Go for it.
I'm curious as to what tools and that you're finding your clients are finding useful, I suppose. There's so much now in the, for example, you can get an iWatch to look at your website and tell you how to make it more inclusive. It can tell you to have narration across all the buttons and things like that.
Yes.
So do you have information about those sorts of tools that are available, or?
So those sort of things would be really what we would job access for.
Right.
But obviously we do have some things because we use those sort of things on our website. The accessibility, clicking buttons and different things as well. Yeah. But if there's a specific thing, we can always look for it and work out. and if there's funding available for it, if there's a job. Yeah. I mean, we've had some examples of job access and any technology things.
Yeah, voice to text.
Yeah, voice to
Yeah,
text type.
yeah, and it's so much better now.
Yeah. Has
We got the rail, the writing.
Yep.
For the minutes taken.
And I mean, I think nowadays too, isn't it, there's so much, you know, that's available just
So
through
much.
technology and AI, related things as, you know, well as what's, you know, being developed specifically for people with disabilities, yeah.
So another question, opposite way, say if you have a specific role to fill,
Yes.
but want to sort of explore and try and give opportunities to people with different disabilities,
Yes.
how would we, or is it possible to approach it with a way that, you know, who do you have on your books that would fit sort of what you enjoy, would want to work with our organisation, so we can then see sort of who is available,
Yep.
potentially the right talent,
Yep.
that we could try and find a position or build a creative position for.
Definitely, yeah. So what would happen in that instance is you just, you know, make contact with us, and then usually we put you in contact with one of our managers, because what we like to do is get our managers to, I guess, assess the person before we put them through to a job. So either Adrian Lenny or one of our other managers would look at your job and what you have available, and we would put it out to our team and see who we might fit that. And then Adrian Lenny, because, you know,
Shortlisting.
we shortlist
Listing
because
the
we are,
candidates.
you know, a reasonably small
But more so
organisation.
if we don't have
Yeah.
actual opportunities, more about the sort of, you know, say for example, Viva Leisure on that fitness.
Yeah.
It's gyms, it's health clubs and things like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
We have a lot of roles available, for example, we employ college students, you know,
Yes.
that start and they can come
Yeah.
and do, you know, work and member services,
Yes.
assist in the gym facilities with
Yeah.
customers. So
Yeah.
roles that could potentially be great.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
But exactly, if we find the right person, potentially we could sort of see if we can create a role in a
Yes,
certain
definitely.
location, because there are so many locations
Yes.
across the country.
Yes.
So it's more of a kind of not coming to you with a job,
Yeah.
but more of a sort of,
And Adrian and Lenny would be the best people to talk to about that, and then have some further conversations about, you know, what those jobs might look like, and, you know, similar to the mechanic, you know, these are the jobs, you know, that he sort of has available, and obviously you, as Jim, you know, as you said, you've got often younger people doing some of those roles, yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and we've had post-COVID, we actually created jobs sort of cleaning equipment, and that's all my client wanted to do. Just go and do the job, go home. She's now a PT instructor, so she's got the confidence, and that's over the last 3.5 years.
see how much sort of talent pools
Yeah.
people would sort of have their specific interests in
Yes.
specific areas and things like that.
Yeah.
And we use a thing we call a positive profile, and it's just a conversation tool that I take the notes on, but they can't say yes or no. They have to give me an answer, what their values are, what their likes are, and that's where we then take the informed coach.
And in terms of engagement types, you mentioned contract work can be considered a casual work.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, type of
We've
people.
got a highly sort of
Yes.
casualised
Yes.
workforce, but lots of roles within that are always available. So if we have a relationship, understanding if you do have a person you think would be well suited, then the chances are we can.
Yes.
And quite often we put it out to all our employment coaches, so I'll talk to people already working, so would you apply for this? That's career development.
Yeah. Well, I think we should wrap up and have afternoon
Yes, we
tea.
do.
There's
Have
plenty
some
of
tea.
opportunity to
So
have.
just, we'll just do the last quick slide, so get
Oh,
in touch,
sorry.
obviously there's our website, phone numbers, Canberra Business Chamber details, so yeah, please reach out, have a look on our website, have a look at those case studies, and Adrian and Lenny can take cards or give you their cards as well. Yeah.
I might just add, afternoon tea
Yes.
is by Embrace Catering. They're a disability, how would you describe them? They employ people with disabilities anyway.
They're
Social
social enterprise,
enterprise.
yeah,
So,
and I think they're doing
so-
some, they've got the canteen at Jerrabomba
Yes.
College, or high school, probably high school in New South Wales.
So there's story today in the writer.
Oh, was it?
They're expanding into
They-
ACT.
okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's what we're catering from today.
I used to do it whenever I've got to
Yeah.
And
cater.
the best thing, the chef actually brought it in today.
Yeah, that's because I was
He's good
short
at it. I'm
drive.
familiar with chef himself.
Yes.
Just read it.
And it's good too.
Okay, fantastic.
Okay, so feel free, I'll get the waters filled up, have some food, go out and make a tea or coffee.